Hey, welcome to Real Talk Mormonism. This is D-Bays, your humble host here, and I'm joined here by Culch. Culch, how's it going? Hey, welcome to Real Talk Mormonism. This is
I'm good.
okay. Yeah, I'm having a few technical difficulties, but we're wearing the shades here. I've got the shades on because I injured my eye just a little bit, so I got the cool shades. Ooh, you got the shades too.
Yeah,
Nice.
man. I'll be your blues brother
Very
tonight.
nice. And I'm the lazy learner. And what's your moniker?
Black's disciple.
Nice, nice. Lazy learner, that's somebody who hasn't really studied it out, because if they had, they would know the church was true, right?
That's right.
And a lax disciple is somebody who just wanted to leave the church to sin, correct?
Yeah, that's me. So
Absolutely.
the title fits.
Absolutely. Now, hey, just real quick, we've got a good show on tap for everybody out there tonight. Again, this is Real Talk Mormonism. You can join the show by joining in and having the link that's in the description of the video, or the one that's rolling across the bottom. Be happy to have you join in after we do a couple of things tonight, because we do have a fun program lined up for us. First of all, we just released a video here, the top 5 Mormon TikToks of all time on your channel. What is this? What's this all about
I'll
here?
buy that.
What is that, Culch?
You and I did a nice little collab where we looked at what were they? The top 5 most liked videos on TikTok, like Mormon related videos. We threw them together with some commentary, went from 5 to 1, and threw that up on my channel last night. Thank you for letting me post it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a fun. The top 5 most liked TikToks of all time. Very interesting episode. It was fun to figure out which ones were the most liked there, and that's a very good show. You got a lot of views on that. I will be releasing that onto the Mormon News Roundup in short order, but right now it is only available on Culch Brothers, codified ex-Mormon humor, right?
Codified. It is.
Absolutely. And your last video before that, what was your last video before that?
Let's see. I did a recap on the whole Fairview, Texas temple thing. I meant it to be quick, but once I got to the meeting, I ended up spending like I think almost 25 or 30 minutes on it. So it's like a quick recap up to that point, and then it's like a deep dive into that last meeting where they rejected it.
Yeah, it's a good episode. We got a lot of good content there. Now, tonight, we are going to be doing something just a little bit different tonight. Again, this is Real Talk Mormonism number 11. I'm joined here by my special guest host, the Lax Disciple Culch. He has a great channel over on YouTube. You can definitely check it out here. Real Talk Mormonism, you can interact with me. I am D-Bays, the host of the Mormon News Roundup and the Mormon Movie Reviews and Real Talk Mormonism. Everything Mormon related, you can find it all here in one place. Now, tonight, we've got a very special episode on our hands here, because we are going to be doing a deep dive here into one of our favorite YouTube channels, and that's the Thoughtful Faith channel over there, hosted by Jacob Hansen. What's this channel all about here, Culch?
It's sometimes also referred to as thoughtless taint, but thoughtful faith works for tonight. Yeah, it's just guy Jacob Hansen, who's an apologetic for the church. He's I don't know how you describe Jacob. He's a lot. He's a lot.
Yes. Now, I'm going to describe him here in a minute, but before we do that, look, what shirt are you wearing there? You got the glasses.
Oh yeah, I've got my Fairview United shirt on. I was chatting with Rebecca Biblioteca the other day, and she said that the Fairview folks wanted to send me a shirt just because of the videos and stuff that I'd put out. So that came today in the mail. So I'm repping Fairview United. Good job, y'all.
And the fit for this video is the Fairfield United shirt. That's nice. See, that's the difference between you and me, Coach. The only thing that anybody has ever sent to me from the Mormon News Roundup is a lot of hate emails. So that's the difference between the two of us.
At least they send you something. You could get nothing.
Absolutely. Now, you nicknamed Jacob Hansen his channel is the thoughtfulfaith.org. I think you coined the moniker instead of thoughtful saint. It's thoughtless taint. Aren't you the one who came up with that?
Yes. As far as I know, I'm the one who came up with it. Nobody has stepped up to challenge that assertion, so I claim it for now. But yeah, over on Twitter, that was where I got my first, I'm not going to say taste of thoughtless taint. That's where I got my first introduction to Jacob.
Very nice.
Over there, I guess Thoughtful Faith was not available, so he went with Thoughtful Saint.
Right.
And then Thoughtful Saint just turned into Thoughtless Taint. It just worked. So
it definitely does. Now, that's the thing is Thoughtful Faith was actually Gina Colvin, who has stopped
Mm-hmm.
podcasting somewhat recently. She did like 400 episodes. It was a really great program. She ended
Mm-hmm.
up leaving the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, joined the Community of Christ. She was actually under the Mormon Stories umbrella, but that's a topic for a different conversation. Let's just, for those of you who are out there who are not familiar with the thoughtless taint, which we use that tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
it's just, it's really a term of affection.
And
Let's review.
he likes it. He has said that it's funny, so I don't think it's a huge insult to him. It's just, it's his moniker.
Hey, he's a good sport about it all.
Mhm.
Bring everybody up to speed about Jacob, because what we're going to do in this episode is that Jacob has about 28 shorts that are released on his channel, and we're going to queue all of those up, and then we're going to give you absolute expert commentary from a lazy learner and codified lax disciple.
Codified, nice.
Yeah, the likes of this commentary, you're not going to be able to get it anywhere else. So let's just give everybody a quick background on Jacob Hansen and what he's all about here real quick. Jacob Hansen is the creator and host of the Thoughtful Faith YouTube channel and podcast. His content focuses on exploring faith, particularly within the context of the Latter-day Saint LDS tradition. Hansen is known for engaging in formal debates on religious topics, which he believes help clarify beliefs through contrast and discussion with those who hold differing views. Brother Hansen also regularly espouses anti-gay, anti-trans, and homophobic rhetoric in the name of his favorite God. I hosted Jacob on the Mormon News Roundup in July of 2023 in episode 68. Oh, and just so you know, I'm D-Days, the host of the Mormon News Roundup, the handsome guy on the left. Like and subscribe, and don't forget to think celestial while you're at it. Now, while Jacob and I were discussing the Mormon Church's unprecedented global temple building spree, Jacob made an incredible claim during that program. Let me play it for you.
Every dollar that the church uses is for humanitarian aid. The building of temples is a form of humanitarian aid if you really believe that temples and temple covenants do good for humanity. In fact, I would argue that the greatest poverty program in the world is the LDS temple program, because when people make and keep covenants in temples, when our missionaries go and teach people to live the laws of the gospel, we actually fight poverty, but we fight it at its roots. So any funds given to the church to further the work of Zion is a charitable humanitarian contribution.
Come on, bro. Seriously.
This was the single most disliked short I have ever produced. Now, let's get your reaction to Jacob's clip there real quick before we get going here. What do you think?
That's my favorite. It's such a stupid claim, and he said it with his whole body. It is. Temple building is the number one thing that's going to help poverty in the world, and it's such bullshit. But he says it with such a straight face and such conviction. You got to give him props for that, even though it is complete BS.
Yeah, in fact, I give a shout out here in this episode. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I give a shout out to you for resurrecting that clip here. And I use some of your material once again. Seems like I'm always mooching off of you. I can't come
That's
up
fine,
with it.
dude.
I can't come up with anything on my own.
It's a symbiotic relationship. I take your stuff, you take mine.
I can't come up with anything on my own. That much we know for sure. Everything that I'm basically like a bricolage, just like Joseph Smith. I just take from the milieu around me and I steal without attribution, and I never cite you one time. I just pass all of your stuff off as mine. It really works out for me. But let's go, because I give a shout out to you real quick coming up. Let's keep going.
Okay.
In response to Cult's reposting of that clip, Jacob challenged me to a debate. I haven't done a debate since my 9th grade speech class at Hillcrest Junior High School in Murray, Utah, which I lost, by the way. Okay, that's enough on that. That basically gives you an overview of what Jacob's all about. It's all about Mormonism through his particular lens. He's really he calls himself, he's really a very conservative person, and he talks a lot about queer theory and really identification of politics, anti-gay, anti-trans. That's really his bellwether. Is that pretty accurate summary?
Yeah, he's in the same vein as Cardin Ellis from Ward Radio, in that, not exactly, but in the whole like everything is woke sort of the way he looks at the world. But Jacob, I don't know, Cardin's kind of just on a dumb level, but Jacob thinks he's like this great philosopher. So he uses big words, and he likes to quote Nietzsche and all these people, Aquinas. So he likes to make himself sound very smart and intelligent, and I think he probably thinks he is.
Yeah, and he's done a bunch of debates with different people as well. That's why he's
Mhm.
challenged you to a debate
Oh
quite
my
a few
God, so
times.
many times.
How come you haven't taken up on any of these debates here, Coach?
No,
What's up
I
with
don't.
that?
I don't take Jacob's bait. Everyone knows. So he. I'll say this about Jacob. He's a pretty good debater. He's done it a lot, so he's experienced. He knows what he's doing, but he likes to set up the rules. We're going to do it on my channel. This is the format. It's like this. So he's already stacking the cards in his favor on top of being a seasoned debater to begin with. And debating's just not my thing. I like to just uh, talk to him on Twitter here and there, throw out a few things and go back and forth, and that's more my style. And I'm not looking to give him any clicks or clout, which is what Jacob Hansen is all about.
Now, it seems like you're telling me that he's a master debater. Is that
Debater.
a master debater?
Master debate. Well, I don't know. He's a debater.
You got to be careful because
Mid-level.
in the church handbook of instruction, I think it specifically says something about master debaters in there. That could be subject to church discipline. I'm
Yeah,
not 100%.
Miracle of Forgiveness, I think, has a whole chapter on master debaters.
Yeah, it definitely does. Okay, so we're gonna queue up these shorts here. He's got about 25 shorts, each of them are 30 seconds long. You know, it's probably gonna take us about an hour to get through these. But have you watched all of these shorts? Have you watched some of these shorts? Well,
No, I've watched a couple of them just to get a feel for, because I've seen a lot of Jacob's long form videos, because I've done some hate watches of them, but I haven't really delved into his shorts. So
okay, well, I have watched all of these shorts, and I almost kind of wish that I hadn't watched the shorts because I feel like my fresh reaction might be better than my prepared and seasoned reaction. But anyway, let's cue them up. We're going to go from oldest to newest, so we're going to see the arc of his content, which is his YouTube channel's been around for like 2-3 years. So let's cue these up one at a time here, and then we're going to give you our expert commentary. Let's start here with Dr. Julie Hanks on garments.
oh God.
That's what the garment thing is about. I've never said don't wear your garments or discourage anyone from wearing them. Never. So I encourage somebody to find where I've discouraged.
So what was it that kind of made it so you could decide, like, I'm not going to wear them all the time if I'm uncomfortable or if I choose not to? Like, was there something that kind of clicked or shifted or?
That's a good question. A big part of it might actually be like when I started following you and listening to your podcast. I know you've had maybe one or two other people that have kind of talked about this, but you talk about it all the time, social media. And
what am I missing here? She said that some people might not want to wear them. She didn't tell anyone in that clip not to wear garments. She just said some people might make the decision not to. What am I missing here?
Yeah, I was waiting for the gotcha, because Jacob's very much like, you said something here and then here you said the opposite. That's what I was looking for. I didn't see it. So maybe, again, this is his first short. This is his first opportunity, and he kind of sucks at it right there. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. It's his first one.
I don't see. He said this is supposed to be a whoops, where she said, I never told anyone not to wear the garments. And then in the clip, she says, well, some people decide not to wear garments. And she didn't even say that was okay. She just postulated the question that some people don't. And what's with, and look, before we leave this one, what is with it with Mormon men who want to police the underwear choices of Mormon women? What is it about the Mormon construct that allows them to weigh in on these issues like it's some kind of their purview to be able to talk about women's underclothes? What gives them the right to do that?
It's the patriarchy, man. But in Jacob's defense, he does that to everyone. It's not just women. He'd police your underwear too. So
I'll take a rain check on that if you don't mind. Okay. Let's go on to number 2 here. This one is Jordan Peterson would love the temple. Oh boy. Oh, here we go. Sorry.
What the temple's message is.
Let me back this up.
okay.
I'm pretty sure this is what the temple's message is.
Now, first, I'm pausing this right away. He says, I'm pretty sure this is what the Mormon temples is. This is the whole entire problem with the temple, is that we don't really know what the messaging of the temple is. It's incredibly bizarre, and there's no real, when you're in the temple, there's no way to ask anybody a question to get clarification. It's not in part of the scriptures. That's why even Jacob Hansen, a faithful member of the church, literally says, I don't really know what the temple is about, but maybe it's about something that Jordan Peterson is talking about. That's a problem. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep it going.
The Christian church is there to remind people, young men included, and perhaps even first and foremost, that they have a woman to find, a garden to walk in, a family to nurture, an ark to build, a land to conquer, a ladder to heaven to build, and the utter terrible catastrophe of life to face stalwartly in truth, devoted to love, and without fear.
Amen.
Okay, wait a minute here. So first of all, give me your fresh thoughts on that one before I take it.
So I don't know a whole lot about Peterson, except that like Jacob is a giant fanboy of him. He's I don't know, is he a psychologist, philosopher type?
Yeah, psychologist.
Yeah, I just know he's got like a very interesting background, and there's, fairly controversial. But Jacob and, the guys, the circle that he runs with, they love that guy. They worship him almost like he's a prophet.
Yeah, absolutely he is, because he uses these incredible vocabulary, which doesn't really mean anything when you try to dissect it, but it sounds very educated because he's trying to cloak religious language in this very pseudo-sophisticated sophistry. And that really resonates for people because he uses words that nobody can really understand. And that is supposed to have some kind of a profound meaning. And this is literally the reason that Richard Dawkins won't debate him, is because it's a nonsensical debate, because what he's espousing or saying has no meaning. It's just a bunch of word salad that's get put together.
Yeah.
But as far as being connected to the temple, what am I missing? I didn't see anything that related to the temple whatsoever. And what the hell does Jordan Peterson have to do with the restored gospel? He's not even a member.
Nothing. He said garden, and that's probably where Jacob went like, oh, there's Garden of Eden in the temple. So, and he said like, young men find a woman. Which, this is the whole problem. You have an ark to build. The problem here is that there was no ark. He said you have a tower to build to get up to God. That's the problem. There was no confounding of the languages. So in other words, we have a bunch of stuff to do that God supposedly told us to do that did not happen. So I guess the message here is that you're supposed to do things that did not happen. I don't understand the connection. I don't see the tie-in, and I don't see anything related to the church whatsoever. I think I don't know what Jordan Peterson is talking about. Once again, I don't see the tie-in to the temple, and I don't see why anybody should care. Okay, now our next one here is on the Faith Matters podcast. Let's check this one out with Amon Corbett. He's the second counselor in the Young Men's Presidency now, I believe, right? Second counselor, I believe.
The quickest way to create all manner of ites.
The quickest way to create all manner of ites. That's a callback to the Book of Mormon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all manner of ites in the Book of Mormon means that there's different people who are doing different things, and that is apparently bad. We're all supposed to be united, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so he's going to say this is the best way to create ites, and creating ites in Mormon parlance is actually a bad thing. We should all be united and not ites.
If a child is walking through the church and every single image of Christ and every single image of an angel and every single image of an apostle who is close and trusted by Christ is of a Eurocentric model, then what does that tell that young Black child or that young Asian child or that young Polynesian child about their racial identity and their proximity to goodness, righteousness, to deity?
Yeah, so Jacob always wants to poo-poo anyone who points out the fact that the church leadership is overwhelmingly white, cis, married, and, just basically Utahns and mostly Arizonans and Idahoans. And he says, well, no, if you point out the fact that if you're not white, then the church really, there's a lot of problems with it, then that's creating ites. And we shouldn't ever bring up our racial or cultural identities because that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. And he's taking his marching orders from the men upstairs. They're saying the same things. I think Russell Nelson gave a talk about that. Like, your identity should be child of God, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, he gave the young adult devotional a couple of years ago, President Nelson did, in which he said, I believe it was in 2022, and the young adult devotional, in my mind, is the most important addresses for the church for the entire year. Forget General Conference. And he said that you should only have 3 labels in your life. You should be a son or a daughter of God, a son of the covenant, meaning that you've gone through the temple, and a disciple of Christ. Those are the only 3 labels that should matter in your life. And that's what Jacob says too. You shouldn't label yourself as gay. You shouldn't label yourself as trans. You shouldn't even label yourself as a woman or black or white or whatever it is, even though those are a core part of your identity. Is who you are, your ancestry, your relationship. But no, you're supposed to become Mormon and leave everything behind and just pretend that you're part of a big conglomerate.
Yeah, you're supposed to label yourself what a 99-year-old man told you to label yourself.
Exactly. Now, Amon Corbett here in his famous talk here to the chaplains for the missionary, the church has a number of different chaplains that go out for the military that are Mormons in the armed forces in the United States. He gave an address to those chaplains decrying people who would have activism against the church. This became a very famous address, and it became labeled as ATC, activism against the church. And he's going to decry that in this next clip.
I speak of our enemy's effort to transform disciples of Jesus Christ into activists towards or against the Lord's church. It is a three-step maneuver that is genius in its simplicity and effectiveness. First, focus the rising generation and the valiant generally away from the doctrine of Christ and on to real or imagined unfairness or injustice in the Lord's church.
See, the problem here is that Amon Corbett is decrying the idea that activism against the church is evil. But the problem is if you look like the Matt Harris series, we've seen that activism against the church is one of the only ways that anything actually happens in the church.
Yep, you're absolutely right. That's, in my opinion, that's how the priesthood ban, the temple ban for Black saints, that's how it came about, was from pressure from the outside. It wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely would not have happened without the activism against the church. This really goes back to basically a thought control stopping technique in which we get from Dallin Oaks and others that says that it's wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true. Right. And that's what he said. What he said is there could be problems in the church, either real or perceived, but you're not allowed to talk about them whatsoever because you're just supposed to keep sweet, pray, and obey. That's a major issue for people. That's not a healthy environment.
Yeah, could you imagine if I said to like Jacob or Ward Radio, it's evil or not allowed to talk shit about me, even if it's true?
Yeah, exactly.
They tell me to take a hike.
Yeah, absolutely. We should be able to have, see, the entire point here, like the Richard Dawkins Foundation, he says that, especially in Great Britain or other places, that the idea that you're criticizing religion, that's insensitive, that's rude, that's cruel, that's beyond the pale. But no, religion is just like any other system of thought, whether it's gun control, climate change, politics, it's all ripe for criticism. And we should be able to point out flaws in somebody's thoughts or actions or hypocrisy wherever we find it. There's nothing special about your faith that makes it sacrosanct and beyond the ability to have a discussion. And we both are in the public sphere and we understand that very clearly.
Yeah. So you're saying you're not a spiritual terrorist if you critique a religion?
That's funny that you mentioned that. We're going to come back to that's an insider joke there, but we're going to come back to that maybe at the end of the episode because I am releasing a reaction video this next week that's going to talk about my interactions with Ward Radio, where they called me a terrorist and a bunch of other nasty things. We'll get back to that later, but I appreciate the call out there. That's really, really good. Oh, Flip, welcome to the program, my friend here.
Hey, Flip.
It's nice to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us. Now, this next clip here with Jacob Hansen, the government is forcibly taking tithing from the church. And is the church the bad guy? I really like this clip. I do remember this. Let's play this.
A minute about this fine that the church got. Let's just keep in mind that the state just used the threat of violence against the church to force the church to pay them a $5 million fine in tithing money.
Okay, I want to stop right away. First of all, he's referencing the SEC fine here, where the church was fined for not disclosing its assets to the federal government and to the members for a period of 22 years from 1997 until 2019. And what Jacob, first of all, gets completely wrong about this is that the church claims that they paid that fine not out of tithing, but out of its commercial proceeds. So the thoughtless taint here doesn't even have the facts right about this fine.
Yeah, and the church paid what, like $1 million of it? Was it Ensign Peak that paid $4 million?
Right.
And the church won? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. The Ensign Peak, which is the church's investment fund, was fined $4 million and the church was fined $1 million. And it did not come, according to the church, it did not come from tithing. We can't confirm that because the church doesn't release is not transparent at all. But he's got his facts absolutely wrong about this. And it's not that really the threat of violence. Come on, that is hyperbole. Yeah. This wasn't a criminal action where the church leaders were facing jail time. This was a purely civil case where it was jointly adjudicated between the Security and Exchange Commission and the church. They came to a resolution of this fine. They agreed to the fine, made a statement. There was no threat of incarceration or violence. I mean, theoretically, if the church didn't pay the fine, then the government could, pursue more actions, but that was never on the table. The idea that this is supposed to be a threat of violence, that's wrong. And number two, he said that it came from tithing. That's wrong. Everything that we have in this is wrong so far. Oops.
Well, Jacob hates the government, and it's like a callback to the early saints clashes with the government. I think that's what he's going for.
Yeah, he doesn't like, the federal income tax, and he's kind of got an FLDS mindset of bleeding the beast, that the government taking anything from us is immoral, and we should try to keep as much for ourselves as humanly possible, which is actually one of the church's philosophies too. Church hates paying taxes. It fights it tooth and nail, and it will go all the way up to the line and even past the line in many places to try to avoid paying the taxes that it owes to different governments, including in Australia, including questionable practices in Canada and in Israel. We've covered Mormon News Roundup episodes on that. We're not going to talk about that now. Let's keep on going here.
And what was the great crime?
Well, it was a civil issue. I mean, yes, a civil matter is a crime, but yeah, the crime here was not following federal law. That's been on the books since 1934. This wasn't some new thing that the church didn't know about. They knew they were supposed to tell the government that they had billions and billions of dollars in the U.S. stock market, and they didn't do it. They broke the law. Pretty simple.
Well, basically, the church didn't file its paperwork according to the arbitrary standards of the SEC and went with what their lawyers thought would work.
Okay, this isn't an arbitrary standard. This is federal code. This is federal law. This isn't some SEC investigator who came up with something completely arbitrary. You can really argue about whether it's the government's business that, corporations like the church should have to disclose assets in the stock market. You can make a case to say that it is none of the government's business for that. The problem here is that the laws are already on the books, and the argument is you're not going to win the argument. That's the problem here. So, let's keep on going.
Seriously, though, $5 million was taken from a private religious institution's donations because they didn't file the paperwork according to the arbitrary dictates of the SEC.
Yeah, they didn't follow the law. That's what you have to do. You have to follow the law in your tax code, or you're going to run amok of the SEC. And the church very well knew this. He wants to throw the lawyers under the bus here. It's not the lawyers who concocted this entire scheme. It was the church leadership led by people like Henry Eyring, people like Robert D. Hales, people like Gordon Hinckley, and every prophet of the church. This ain't the lawyers, buddy. This, like the Widow's Mite report has brought out, there was 650,000 individual misstatements along the way. This just wasn't one piece of advice. Even Roger Clark, who ran the investment fund, had his own investment fund on the side. Nobody gets fined for this crap because they know how to do it. They know what the law is. If you had a problem with the SEC, you should have called them up on the phone and said, hey, is it okay if we're running these shell companies and doing all of this weird stuff? Are you fine with it? But they didn't do that. So they're trying to throw the lawyers under the bus instead of the church leadership. I have a problem with that.
If you think the church is the bad guy in this exchange, it's either because you already hate the church or you're a brainwashed government worshiper.
Okay, well, your reaction to that one?
Well, he makes it a black and white thing. If you're upset at the church, you think the church is a bad guy, it's either this or it's this, and that's all that it can be. And Cardin does that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about hating the church. It's about saying, we have a federal tax code that's on the books and people should follow it. I mean, the rationale behind forcing corporations like the church to disclose their assets, it really came about, like I said, this law has been on the books since 1934 because we had the stock market panic of 1929. And we need to understand who the players are in the market. For instance, President Nelson is a corporation soul. He has control over $300 billion worth of assets. The government should know who those players are because they have the ability to affect the United States, in particular, our entire society. When you have tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in the stock market, that affects everyone. That's why you needed to disclose those assets. It wasn't about the lawyers. Church leaders made intentional, repeated decisions to break the law, and they were held accountable. They are the bad guy. That's what happens when you break the law. You face the music. Any last thoughts on this one?
Honestly, they got a little slap on the wrist and they made that money back in about 5 minutes.
Exactly. In about 5 minutes. The church makes almost $1 billion a week. $1 billion a week. You know how fast you can make $5 million back? The church makes about $100 million a day. Okay, so they make about $5 million an hour. Okay, so this was about an hour's worth of income for the church. Absolutely nothing. Chump change. Absolutely nothing. Okay, let's go on to the next one here. We got a few more here. We are part of a revolution. This is the word radio mantra, is that they are part of a revolution. Let's check this out.
Is just this, is that we are part of a revolution to make obsolete the systems of the world by helping people to voluntarily live in harmony with one another and in right relationship with one another and with God. And it starts from the inside out. It starts with you making yourself right with God, and then you make yourself right with your family, with your people around you. And if everybody does that, Zion emerges, Babylon falls.
Okay, so if everybody will just join the church culture, we could all live in peace and harmony.
It would be perfect, man. Zion would rise and Babylon would fall.
You know, the problem here is that what we have here is really kind of a feel-good Jesus-type New Testament gospel. But when we back it up a little bit, we see what happens if we are all following the dictates of Yahweh in particular. We get to have people who approving of slavery. We get to have ridiculous sexism where women are second-class citizens. We get to stone witches for an imaginary thought crimes. When women in the Bible are raped, they're forced to marry their rapists. Women are not even allowed to speak in church, much less hold any positions whatsoever. This, and like I said, we could continue on down the line with the Mormon church and the racist history of fighting the ERA, of all of these things. This is how we live in harmony with others, is by fighting the Civil Rights Act of 1964, by fighting the Equal Rights Amendment, by being racist until 1978, by keeping those things. See, this is a very whitewashed version of a New Testament Jesus New Testament. He doesn't take the implications out further with the reprehensible history of polygamy. That's living nice by lying to the federal government about polygamy. Okay, this is a whitewash narrative that does not conform to reality. And by the way, as far as the revolution is concerned, I'll just say one more other thing. The revolution is the stone that was cut out of the mountain here, culture without hands, is not rolling down to the bottom of the hill. The church's population is not gaining on the global population. The church only gained like a population last year of like, I don't know, like it was like 1.2%, but the global population increased almost 2%. So this revolution that is supposed to roll forth, as we saw in the Old Testament with, you know, King Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel and the stone that was supposed to smash all the nations of the earth and roll forth and fill the whole earth, it's not even going to get down to the bottom of the mountain, much less become a revolution. The Mormon shrivel is real. And there will probably never be on this planet more than 4 million active Mormons, no matter how many humans on this planet are around at any given time. This is going to be a provincial, shrinking, dogmatic theocracy. It's not a revolution.
Yeah, if you spend any time over on Twitter, they've kind of moved on to a new narrative. It's more, now it's the time to separate the wheats from the tares, and that's what they're going with.
Oh, absolutely. You'll hear that often from Jacob and from Cardinellis, the shifting of the wheat and the tares. If you're part of the church, you're the wheat. If you're not, you're part of the tares. If you're part of the church, you're the sheep. If you're not, you're just the goat. You're literally ripe for the second coming to be burned with fire when Jesus comes again.
Oh, Jim.
I have no interest in qualifying love for our neighbors.
Do you
I have no
interest
interest in limiting love for our neighbors. I have no interest in pretending that there is another side to, gee, well, maybe we're loving our neighbor too much.
Would you see that maybe Luke is right, that we have to start defining what love is so the word doesn't get stolen?
No, I wouldn't concede any of that. I think that's kind of nonsensical.
Real love for the sinner may compel courageous confrontation, so tolerance without limit could lead to spineless permissiveness. The Lord drew boundary lines to define acceptable limits of tolerance. Danger rises when those divine limits are disobeyed. Just as parents teach little children not to run and play in the street, the Savior taught us that we need not tolerate evil.
Okay, here. So it seems like what he's saying here is that we can love people too much. Am I getting that right? We shouldn't love people. We should just love them a little bit. What am I missing here?
Yeah, and he starts with Jim. If anybody knows Jim, Jim is very just like, love your neighbor. I don't know. Jim's, to me, is a cool member. If there were more Jim Bennetts, I think the church would be better. Less Jacob Hansens, more Jim Bennetts. But Jacob is more on this, I don't know, the whole cult of niceness thing. like basically saying you don't have to love people, you can qualify your love. Jacob kind of like, I don't know, hate is like love to him. The way he says, "Oh, I love people. I love Jim Bennett. I love John DeLynn," he says. He doesn't love John DeLynn. He fucking hates
No.
John DeLynn. He hates his guts. So it's just a bunch of bullshit that he spews.
Well, it really, everything underneath the Thoughtful Saint channel is really an attack on gay people. Now, this clip didn't say anything about, people of the LGBTQ community, but it was all about that. In other words, we're supposed to love the sinner, but hate the sin. And in practical application, it's not possible to do that. If you think that someone is literally born broken, it's impossible to show true love to them. And that's what Jim Bennett is pointing out in that clip, is that, we need to love everybody in whatever circumstance that they're in, regardless of their supposed, what President Nelson here is saying is that Jesus has shown us the way on, that we can't be permissive. This is really taking us back to President Kimball. That was one of his favorite words, is permissiveness of allowing homosexuality and other supposed evils to run amok. And if we love people too much, then we're tolerating them too much.
Yeah.
It's really a reprehensible way of interacting with your brothers and sisters, and of looking at people only through a small dogmatic lens of the gospel that says, if you're not doing exactly what I want you to do, then you won't be in full fellowship with me, and I will have to keep you at arm's distance. I think that is a reprehensible mentality. Any last thoughts on this one?
No, let's go on to the next one.
Okay, here we go. Let's keep this going here. He really likes taking it to Jim Bennett because Jim Bennett is a progmo, and Jacob really has a lot of disdain for those progmos.
He hates them. I mean, he loves them.
To define marriage in some other way would sadly serve to destroy the institution of marriage. Such schemes are contrary to the plan of God. Also know that gender is an essential characteristic of individual premortal, mortal, and eternal identity and purpose.
God-sanctioned marriage between a man and a woman has been the basis of civilization for thousands of years. There is no justification to redefine what marriage is. Such is not our right, and those who try will find themselves answerable to God.
Oh, there's no justification for redefining marriage except for when the Mormon Church wanted to do it for like 100 years.
Mm-hmm. I know they don't like it when you bring that up. The whole polygamy thing is not traditional marriage, but they were okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, and also he says that God has done this, God has done. Where's the demonstration that God has defined marriage? Where is the evidence besides what's written in a holy book? Because a holy book is not evidence in of itself; it's merely a claim. How can we confirm that God has weighed in on any of these things? We're just supposed to take it on faith. Well, taking things on faith is that's a poor epistemology, and that is not a reliable pathway to truth until such time that you can demonstrate that God cares about who we marry, who we have sex with, and in what positions. Then I don't see this as anything that the church can possibly weigh in on. That's my opinion.
But it's Jacob's favorite topic.
Absolutely. Yeah, he loves to bring up the proclamation of the family. That was what was referenced in there, like it's sacrosanct. In fact, the thing about it is that the family proclamation wasn't even written by the leaders of the church. It was drafted by the lawyers. That's all available data that we have.
And it's not canonized either. So I always tell them, like, canonize that shit, and then you can say it's scripture. Otherwise, shut up.
Yeah. Now here's part of the debates that he had with Bill Reel, but they never did get to the end of those debates. They kind of fell apart after a time here. Let's play this.
Right? Like Latter-day Saints live significantly longer. Kind of the
longer
national
better?
average.
Is longer better?
Yes, I think living a long life is better.
Okay.
I would say.
Maybe.
If I've never heard someone say, "Man, I wish I didn't have that last child that I have." They really are.
I wish I would have not had any children because I wasn't equipped to do it.
Our society is becoming a death cult because I honestly believe deep down in your heart, people don't want life to continue.
Our society is becoming a death cult. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that's why we're all alive.
Things like Hamas are death cults. They worship the idea of blowing yourself up and be able to go to, paradise. I don't see our society, which is becoming far more secular, being a death cult here. And as far as he's never heard of anybody who regrets having children, I think that's an incredibly myopic take. There's a lot of women out there who were not mentally prepared to have additional children. They weren't financially prepared to have additional children. And their circumstances didn't allow for it. And, I don't see how you're going to lecture these people and tell them that you've never met anybody who said, I wasn't prepared to do these things. I think that's an incredibly bad take here. You need to get out and talk to more people.
Yeah, and I don't know that people are going to outright say that they had regrets, but, probably inside they think that they have.
Look, if you're not prepared financially to bring a child into the world, then you shouldn't. If you're not prepared emotionally to bring a child into the world, then you shouldn't. If you don't have a stable environment for that child to be raised, then you shouldn't bring those children into the world. It can be an immoral act of deliberately bringing a life into this planet in which you can't either take care of it properly or you don't have the emotional capability to do so. That's immoral.
So the church doesn't care about that.
Right.
Their advice is like, screw your financial situation. You're married, start having kids, and you deal with it later.
Exactly. That's a harmful mentality. In fact, Dallin Oaks in the last Young Adult Devotional bemoaned the fact that Latter-day Saints in general are having less children and are getting married later. That, according to the church, is a bad way to go. But it seems like sociological studies show that you should have the amount of children that is right for you, not in accordance with what a 99-year-old Mormon prophet wants you to do.
Do you think that's driven by, wanting the birth rate in the church to increase? Because the more kids that are had, the more potential members, the more children of record.
Absolutely. And the more tithing receipts. It all comes down to that. The best way to really, they pointed out this many times, the best way to grow a religion is not through proselytization. That's time consuming. It's expensive. The missionary program in the church costs $1 billion a year. It's subsidized by the members. But the best way to grow a religion, and the senior leaders of the church know this through the Mormon Leaks documents and in other documents, the best way to grow a religion is through birth rate. Getting children, because they are the most likely to stay in the church, even though we've been reviewing those Mormon Leaks documents, up to 70% in the United States of children leave before they're young adults, and 80% don't stay in the church internationally. And those numbers are probably far worse now than they were in the Mormon Leaks timeframe, but it's still the best way to go. Okay, now here's our next one. Again, Jacob is going to be hitting all the gay issues. Those are Jacob's favorite issues.
I've been walking around Salt Lake for like an afternoon. This city literally cannot get enough of Pride Month. Just literally drinking out of a fire hose. And I was thinking to myself, has any city waved the white flag quicker and surrendered easier than Salt Lake City? Except for obviously PGA Tour surrendering to the Live Tour. Has anyone else given up without a fight quicker than Salt Lake? Used to be the capital of the LDS Church, very values-based city. You know what I'm saying? Can't buy alcohol on Sundays. The alcohol you do buy is has less alcoholic content. A lot of rules, and just the progressive movement came in and just immediately we're sorry, we didn't mean to offend anyone. Please do whatever you want, take our city. Even Texas, they're hey, we want to wave the pride flag, and they're nah, we're good. We love you, but I don't think so. Salt Lake City just gave up.
Well, first of all, what's wrong with having a pride flag? What's the big issue with a pride flag? What is the issue? I don't understand.
I mean, there's not. If you're taking sort of a libertarian view, it's, let people do what they want to do as long as they're not hurting anybody, right? But that, I don't know, that clip, I think, just kind of sums up Jacob's politics and what he thinks about the LGBTQ community and movement, or religion, as he likes to call it.
I don't understand what the problem is with, fine, you believe in a traditional marriage. Other people don't, want to have an expanded definition of marriage. I don't understand what the problem is. What in my mind, again, morality is based around human well-being. If you can demonstrate that same-sex relationships have worse outcomes for children, you might have a leg to stand on. But guess what? We know. In particular, lesbian relationships have better outcomes than same-sex or than opposite-gender families. So there's no harm that's being done to anyone in this situation. And I'm a real libertarian at heart. If you're doing consensual activity that is harming no one, then it should not be restrained in the public sphere. And that's the entire gay pride. Fine, you're not gay. I don't understand the issue of you pointing it out. And as far as the church giving up, no, the church didn't give up. It fought tooth and nail. It poured millions of dollars into fighting gay marriage, both in Proposition 8 and in many other state legislatures and in the federal government. It hired lobbyists. It worked as hard as it could. And guess what happened? The Lord didn't have the church's back, and Obergefell went through, and guess what? The same-sex marriage is the law of the land now in the United States. The church lost, and it's basically fallen down on the sword. And it gave up. Whoops. Bummer. Okay, let's keep on going here. Again, more on gay marriage here. That's one of his.
The word marriage describes.
Sorry. Let's. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. Here we go.
The word marriage describes a union between a man and a woman. If I were to describe a union between a man and a man, I would not be describing the same thing. From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Marriage, as defined by God and Christianity generally, is a word that is not just a union between two people who love each other. It is the union between the male and female. The word.
Okay, so the real question that I have for Culch here is, why should we care what's written in the Gospel of Mark? Again, what we have the Gospel of Mark is copies of stories, of oral translations of anonymous authors. We don't even know who wrote the Gospel of Mark, and it was transmitted to us and written decades later. Again, copies of oral traditions of stories. Why should we take that as authoritative in any way possible, especially in 2024? Where's the connection? Why should we take that as authoritative?
Well, we shouldn't, but the people that he's reaching out to, he assumes they all do. So he's preaching to the choir, and going to sources that they're going to believe and go like, yes, he knows what he's talking about. My question is, who the fuck edited that video? Did he do that himself? Because the music was weird for the topic, and then it was a lot of like cutting and going forward. I don't know. This is one of his older ones, so I'll cut him a little slack.
And this is the whole problem here with this video, is he said that gay marriage doesn't exist. So he doesn't recognize, even though our government recognizes same-sex marriage as a legitimate thing, he doesn't recognize it. I have yet to hear him say on his channel that he even recognizes this. He devalues it and says that it's not a real marriage. I do have a question. Does Jacob actually consider these people to be married? Because the law of the land does, but for him, he doesn't even consider them to be married.
Well, he doesn't care about the law of the land, apparently. So do I have it right? Does he have family members who are gay or lesbian?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
He's one of 8 children in his family. 7 of his siblings have all left the church. He's the last child in his family, born in the covenant. This was once upon a time a great Mormon family, and even some of his other people, not his siblings, have left the church. He's literally one of the last people standing in the church. In some ways, honestly, Culch, that does make me sad. You see the Mormon shrivel just drying up before your eyes, an entire cultural heritage just evaporating overnight. It does.
I wonder if that's why he goes so hard, because it's almost like he's overcompensating with how into church he is, and he's tried to make himself into this apologetic voice. And I wonder if it's just like he's seen everybody go, so he's like, I just have to totally go for it. Thanks, Chris. Okay, Chris, I thought he had said he has a gay sibling. So that makes it, I don't know, that's even worse that he's so anti-gay. I mean, I get that you think traditional marriage is what God has said, and that's fine. I'm in a traditional marriage. Most of us probably are. I have nothing against traditional marriage, and I don't think, gay marriage is a threat to that at all. But it's just weird that he goes so hard for the church and so hard against that.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see how all I can describe that as is hate. He talks about we can't love people too much. That's what we played in the earlier clip. And that it's impossible, as I said before, to hate the sin but love the sinner. That's not a thing. That cannot be accomplished. And it really has consumed a lot of his ideology, is the identitarianism of making sure that people are. He's even talked about, I've watched some of his content on being on disciplinary councils where he excommunicated homosexuals out of the church. That's one of his pet projects, is to he has a real disdain for the gay population. It's very, very harmful.
And he refers to it as, my friend had to go to a disciplinary council. It's like, that dude's not your friend. That's not your fucking friend.
Okay, let's keep on going. He's going to talk more about the patriarchy here.
Controversial lines in the family proclamation is this: by divine design, fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness. Human beings are not disconnected from the animal kingdom. Our physical and mental natures are very much emergent from the animal kingdom. Our animal natures give us the raw ingredients we are expected to channel in order to create a celestial order. Human beings are endowed with herd instincts, and herd animals develop hierarchical structures. The family itself is a hierarchical structure. But what should the nature of this structure be? That is what the family proclamation reveals. Fathers and mothers are to be equal partners, but that they don't have the same roles.
Equal partners, fathers and mothers in the church they're equal partners. How's that a thing when it says specifically that the men are to preside over the women? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's what they like to say, but we all know that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, how can you say that they're equal partners, but they have different roles when a woman never has the last say in the church at all, and she doesn't have the priesthood, she doesn't have the authority, she has to look to the man for everything as far as priesthood blessings, as far as, all these things in the church. I don't understand how those two things are equal. And the more important question is he is trotting out the family proclamation as it is supposed to be authoritative. Why should we accept what is in the family proclamation as authoritative? What is the evidence that this document is divinely inspired and is therefore authoritative for all of us? I see no evidence of that. What I see is that the church brought out the family proclamation in order to have standing in the state of Hawaii to run a lawsuit. That doesn't smack to me as inspiration. That smacks to me as a legalistic maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next up. The moment you realize that God has a body. Okay. Let's back this one up.
Jesus, his body, does he still have it?
Yes.
And is that body a substance? Part of his substance?
And the hypostatic union. Yeah. The word became flesh. The divine nature of the word
and continues and does he continue to have flesh today?
He has a glorified body, yes.
So God has a glorified body?
God, the Son, has a glorified body.
Okay. And the Father is of the same substance as the Son, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I kind of like that one.
Well, why do you like that one?
I like sometimes I like when Jacob debates these evangelical guys and twists some of them into pretzels. Sometimes he gets twisted into pretzels, but I like that one. That was actually good. And I like that meme at the end. I don't know what that cartoon guy is, but I like that with the side eye. Yeah.
I greatly prefer when Jacob hands it to the evangelicals. I do not want the evangelicals to win. I'm sorry. I will take Mormonism needs to triumph over evangelicals, and I will just put that out there right now. So when he debates these guys, I'm in Jacob's corner every time. I don't know.
Yeah.
You just call me sick. I don't know what the reason behind
Well,
it
I don't know if you have the same feeling, but like I'm okay with me shitting on the church because was a part of it for a really long time. But like when these evangelicals come for it, it really pisses me off. Like even though I couldn't care less, I don't consider myself a part of the church anymore. I don't like when they come for the Mormons.
I absolutely do not like it either. And for me, this entire argument, I can sum this up. This is basically like people talking about the Marvel universe. Can Thor beat up Hulk? Or can Hulk beat up the Scarlet Witch? Or who is the strongest Avenger? Or what happened before Thanos got the Rings of Power? All this is in the same vein here because we don't have evidence for absolutely any of this. This is like philosophers talking about the substance of God. Until such time as we have a demonstration of that substance, this is a completely pointless. Can Superman beat up Batman? Well, I guess he probably can, right? Maybe that's a bad example. But can Superman beat up Thanos? Can he? What do you think?
Sure, why not? He's super.
That's what we're talking about here. This is the same amount of evidence for Thor and Superman that we have for God's body and Jesus's current body. That's the same amount of stuff here. It's a complete and utter waste of time here. Okay, now here the next one. By your fruits ye shall know them. Okay, 1 second here.
actions manifest in the worship of something that is not Christ, they are heading in the wrong direction. The actions of Latter-day Saints come far closer to being aligned with Jesus Christ than, or as much or more so in the fruits that come from them. The Christian fruits are all over the behavior of the Latter-day Saints. When people's actions manifest in the worship of something that is not Christ, they are heading in the wrong direction.
Sorry, I got distracted there for a second there. By their
okay, I
fruit,
was like, I feel like we've seen this before.
Sorry, by their fruits you shall know them. What did you get from this clip?
I don't know. Again, I was too focused on the editing and the weird music and going like, did Jacob come up with this himself? Did he have somebody else edit it for him? It had Ward Radio vibes to me.
Well, the issue that I've got with this is, you know, by their fruits you shall know them. Whether a religion gives a lot of money away has absolutely nothing to do with the truth claims of the religion. It just might be the case out there that one of these religions is incredibly stingy, but all of their truth claims are valid. That has nothing to do with whether they're generous or not. I mean, we would hope that religions lead to more generosity among people, and Mormons are very generous in and of themselves.
And they do a lot of service and things. And I know a lot of people join the church just based off of the example of the members they see. So not necessarily the truth claims, or they just saw like, this is a really good family that I'm friends with. They help us out. They're super nice. I want to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And there's a good reason for that. Mormons are among the greatest people in the planet. We covered this in the Mormon News Roundup last week. In Wallet Hub, they did a survey of Latter-day Saints. They are the most generous people in the entire United States. And we talk about the amount of money that they give to the church, 10%. It is a massive amount of sum. The problem here, of course, is that what the church does with those donations, a very tiny fraction of those donations actually go towards charity and alleviating human suffering. And it really dilutes the power of Latter-day Saints giving incredible generosity. And it puts it into places like Ensign Peak, where it sits there and rots in Ensign Peak and only goes to enrich egg-headed stockholders and the dividends of people like Elon Musk and Apple and Microsoft, instead of that donation going to alleviate the human suffering now. So if you want to talk about fruits, the fruits have been seriously diminished by the church straining those through church headquarters and not giving those to charitable endeavors.
Yeah, I remember you guys bringing that up, and I had a thought that they are very charitable, which is great, but they're giving that money for the most part, maybe not all of it, giving it to the church. And I go, well, do I like that a whole lot? Not really. I like that they're being charitable. I don't really like the charity necessarily they're giving it to.
Yeah, and the other thing is the church, the members of the church are amongst the most generous in giving away their time. Mormons volunteer more than almost any other group, and this is also the other problem with this is that when you're donating that time, that includes time in the temple, doing warmed over Masonic rituals for Vlad the Impaler and Holocaust survivors. That type of volunteering doesn't help anyone on this planet right now, and there's no good reason to believe that it helps anyone at any time. So what the church does with the members is it takes all the money that they have, and instead of using it to help humanitarian purposes, the church uses it for its own purposes. And then it takes the volunteering time of the members, and instead of using it to help other people, it's done, it's bottled up into temples, and it just evaporates there. There's no good reason to believe that these rituals have any salvific efficacy after this life. Any last thoughts?
Do they really count temple attendance as service hours?
For sure.
No shit.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's keep on going here. And this was an interesting one here. Here he talks with the Uber Mormon, who I actually had on the Mormon News Roundup once upon a time. The Uber Mormon, Cody, is on the left hand. I had him on the Mormon News Roundup once upon a time, and here they're talking about Weezer here. I'm worried about this one. We might get a copyright strike. I might have to delete this one out later, but let's take a look at this short.
Do you have like a favorite song or a favorite music artist that you like to listen to?
I love Weezer.
Do you have
that's your short? That's it. Are you a big Weezer fan?
I love Weezer. I really do. The Blue Album is awesome.
I'll bet you do. I'll bet you do. You like all types of music. You got the best.
I saw them back in like 1997 when Pinkerton came out. This little place in Tempe, Arizona. It was a badass show.
All right, and now Jacob is going to take on Dan McClellan.
All right.
Oh,
I see it.
you should not expect the data to support what you have faith in, and they don't.
So this is, I'm going to pause it right away. Don't expect the data to support your faith. And that's the reason for that, is because if you had reasons, you wouldn't need faith. Faith is the absence of reason. It is inherently unreasonable, because if you had reasons, you would give those. So yes, Dan is 100% right according to my definition of faith. It can't possibly be reasonable because you would just give the reason and it would be data. Hence, data and faith are inherently contradictory.
The data pretty firmly points in the opposite direction of a historical Book of Mormon. And I'm highly critical of that as something that is always trying to not follow the data where they lead, but get around the data, sidestep the data to get to a predetermined conclusion.
So not only is the Book of Mormon not what it claims to be, but the church is intentionally sidestepping the data in order to get to a conclusion that it wants?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You finally summarized things correctly, Jacob. The Book of Mormon is ahistorical, and I think actually Jacob's view on this has actually changed, because Jacob doesn't want to defend the Book of Mormon as historical.
Oh, really?
I've seen that before, and I think we'll get that in one of the clips coming up. He's evolved over that, because he'll talk about Book of Mormon anachronisms coming up. And I don't
might challenge you to a debate on that now that you said that. He'll be like, I'll challenge it. I'll say it's historical.
I don't think he believes that it is historical. He doesn't want to defend that. And
I don't know. I think he believes 100%.
We'll see, because he's going to mention Book of Mormon anachronisms coming up here. So let's keep it on going.
Man, John DeLynn must be loving this interview. I wonder why he chose to talk with Dan McClellan.
Why do you think he chose to talk to Dan McClellan here, Culch?
Dan is a big name, so I think if John's just going off getting viewers for his show, it's a good get for him guest wise. But Dan he's more on the progressive side, so maybe that was made it easier to get him on the show.
Yeah, without question. Now, Chris brought up in the chat here, do you think Dan is a believer? And that's one thing that Dan puts out. You know, he doesn't talk about his personal beliefs at all.
Right.
It's kind of hard to read the tea leaves. And if he wasn't a believer, I kind of feel like, I don't know how much of the Kool-Aid he drinks. I'm guessing that he only drinks like 30% of the Kool-Aid, but I don't know. What do you think? Dan's a believer or what? I mean, he is a Mormon.
I think he for sure at one time was. He might still be. But if he is, I don't know, maybe he's just decided like I like the church. It works for me and for my family. And so despite what I think, I'm going to stay in.
It's definitely hard to determine. I can't figure out Dan McClellan, but I do like his takes. And the idea of Jacob taking on Dan McClellan, that's not going to work out very well for Jacob Hansen. I promise you that. Dan is going to get the better of him on that one. Okay, now Protestants believe in personal revelation too.
Humans are so fallible, why should we trust in human ability so much to know the mind and will of God?
Let's use that example that I said where God appears in the room to you, blasts you with his glory, and says, like, I am God, and you need to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then you hold up your Bible and say, nuh-uh, you're not God because you don't fit the way I interpret this book. I fundamentally, what I believe when I say that I've received a spiritual witness is I believe that God is talking to me, just like he spoke it through the hearts of the men on the road to Emmaus. You don't believe that the Bible is true simply because you believe that the Bible is true. You believe that the Bible is true because God revealed it to you directly. God told you that his book is true. He wrote it on your heart. And he can write all sorts of things on your heart.
Okay, your reaction to this one, Culch, real quick before I get going on this one.
I don't know. I'm gonna let you go first. I know this is him going. This is an evangelical debate.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. What evidence do we have that God has done anything? And as far as writing on your heart is concerned, that is a poor method for determining the truth of anything, because you can believe anything that you want with your heart. What is the methodology that discriminates between wishful thinking of what I might think is true, of being mistaken, of having a vision, of just getting things wrong? If the only way to determine the truth of things is through feelings, that's the problem. If feelings are not a reliable pathway to truth, period, mic drop, end of story. And he talked about in the clip, he said, well, God could appear to all of us and tell us to join the church. That's the problem of divine hiddenness. Why doesn't God just come out and clear all of this up very simply for all of us? That way we would know of his existence, and then we could choose whether we wanted to follow him, join his church, or follow his commandments. But he simply does not do this. The problem of divine hiddenness is a major problem here, and Jacob just doesn't deal with it. Instead, he just says, well, God will tell you in your heart. That's the problem. Your heart, that's not a reliable pathway to determine the truth of anything, is following one's heart. I want to thank Mr. Theodus J. Whoopi. Thanks so much, Lazy Learner and Lax Disciple. Thanks for the super chat, my friend. Greatly appreciate it. Shout out to you. Really appreciate that. Thanks again so much. Any last thoughts on that one?
No, I think if God showed up, he wouldn't do it. And Jacob would say like, well, then you wouldn't need faith to believe. That's why God doesn't show up. Because you said, why doesn't God just show up?
Right.
And put this to rest. That would be Jacob's argument. Well, then you wouldn't have faith.
This is the entire problem here, is that we know that Satan, for instance, has complete knowledge of God, and yet he doesn't follow him. So it doesn't follow that merely if you know of God's existence out of a certainty, that therefore you must follow him. We know that that's not the case. And in fact, you can go back to Mormon doctrine in particular with the war in heaven that happened in the pre-life. We had supposedly a bunch of black people in the pre-existence. This is Mormon theology, that knew of God's existence, had a perfect knowledge of God, and yet did what? Chose not to follow him. So the idea that God can reveal to you and you can still rebel is perfectly in line with Mormon theology, and yet God continues not to do so. He continues to play hide and seek, and he's the ultimate hide and seek champion. And he could clear all of this up by just making his will known in some concrete manner other than your heart. And like Jacob said, he could just appear to the room in all of his glory and tell you what to do. Why doesn't he do that? Apparently, he doesn't want people to know of his existence, and that's a serious problem. Now, here's this next one. This is a big one here. Jacob is going to talk about the tithing and the temple.
Some people talk about tithing like it's some kind of an entry fee to get into the temple.
Culch, is tithing an entry fee into the temple?
Can you get into the temple if you don't pay it?
No.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's absolutely an entry fee. Just like you can't get into a Washington Commanders game without paying in, you can't get to the temple without paying in. It is literally pay to play, with the one caveat that if you don't make any money, I suppose you can still get in there, but that would be rare.
In the temple, we enter into a covenant of consecration, where we are willing to give up everything to God and to the church and to the building up of his kingdom on earth. Is a person really ready for that kind of a covenant if they are unwilling to even give up 10% of what they have? This isn't even really about money. It's ultimately about what you love and what you worship.
What lack I yet? Thou wilt be perfect. Go, and so that thou hast, and give to the poor. And thou shalt have treasure in heaven. And come and follow me.
Okay, so any quick reactions on this, or do you want me to go first?
Let me think.
Well,
No,
let me
just
just
all
go
right.
ahead.
You go.
All right, go ahead.
I was going to say, paying tithing is a lot for a lot of people, 10% of their income. And he's saying like, but in the temple, you're going to consecrate everything. So if you can't even give 10%, you're not even ready to make those other commitments. But those other commitments aren't something that you have to tangibly give. You say, I'll give my life, I'll give my time, I'll give all my property, but you don't actually have to do that. You say you're going to do it, but realistically, you never will. But 10% of your money is real. Like that's coming out of your bank account every single paycheck to get into the temple.
Yeah, so he brings out the clip here of Jesus in I believe it's the Gospel of Matthew, where the rich man comes and asks Jesus what he must do to enter into eternal life. And this is the only time that Jesus is asked, at least according to the Gospels, what you have to do to get into heaven. And what he told the young man is that you need to sell everything and follow me. But the young man went away sorrowing and refused to do it because he had much possessions. The irony here is that the church is the rich man now. And the church hasn't sold all that it has given and given to the poor and followed Jesus. Instead, it has fraudulently and shamefully hoarded $300 billion for who? For itself, for a rainy day.
Fund.
Yeah, for the second coming. So the church is not even following its own or Jesus' supposed advice about what to do to gain eternal life. That's a major problem. Now, as far as making covenants in the temple, I want to talk about that, for instance, because can I make a covenant with an invisible 13-headed demon named Dexter who lives in my garage? Coach, can I make a covenant with that demon? I'm asking you kind of a thought experiment here.
I mean, you could say you're making a covenant with him.
Right. I can say that I'm making a covenant with him. Have I made a covenant with him?
I don't know if he's real, so I don't know if you have or not.
Right. There's no demonstration that anyone has made a covenant with anyone in the temple. No one has a demonstrated covenant with any supernatural creature in the temple. No one has ever made a covenant in a Mormon temple. No one. That's the clip that's going to go viral. And why not? It's for the same thing that I said about my 13-headed demon named Dexter. Until such time as we have evidence that Dexter exists and can make it and is a thinking agent and can reciprocate that covenant, I have made a covenant with no one or no thing. We don't have a demonstration that Elohim, Michael, and Jehovah are currently thinking agents. Therefore, no one has made a covenant to do anything in the temple. The best that you could say in the temple is that you made a covenant with a tape recorder. That's the best that you can demonstrate until such time that you can provide evidence that there is a thinking agent on the other side of the covenant. There is no covenant. That's the problem here, Jacob. Any other thoughts on this one? Tithing being part of the temple? Okay, let's keep going. We got about 6 of these left here. Let's keep on going.
Oh, we made it far.
Yeah, here's Jordan Peterson once again. Does the church actually, I think I queued up a different one. Does the church give enough money to the poor? This is going to be interesting.
He's going to say yes.
Doesn't give more directly. A lot of people get bothered that the church doesn't give more directly to charity. But maybe there's a reason for that.
So oftentimes the church, when it does engage in alleged humanitarian giving, it will write checks to the Red Cross, the World Food Program, the food banks, and things like that. It doesn't necessarily do the heavy lifting on its own. Is that a problem, Coach?
No, not necessarily. I think if they're giving money to have other people help, that counts. And they do. I mean, they've got Welfare Square. They've got stuff that they do. So it's not, like they're doing nothing. But they have the means to do so much more.
Yes, I do not have a problem whatsoever with the church using intermediaries to alleviate the human suffering on this planet. In fact, in some ways, it might even be preferred because those organizations the vast majority of them are externally audited, so we can confirm that the work that's being done is actually being used for good. Welfare Square, we have no idea how much money is going out of Welfare Square. I can't say. I don't know what it's all about. So the church, why doesn't the church give more directly? No issues with that whatsoever. The problem that I have is the lack of charitable donations, where we know that it is a very small percentage of the church. Even if we take the church's humanitarian report at face value, which was in 2023, was $1.4 billion. The church's total valuation is about $300 billion. That's less than 0.5% of alleged humanitarian giving. That is a shamefully small amount of giving, even if we take the church at its word for doing it. Okay. So, hey, Theodis, once again, my friend, thank you so much, Dexter. I can't prove Dexter to you, but if he were around, he would thank you very deeply, my friend. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you being here. Let's continue on. What does the church give enough to the poor? That's a major criticism of a lot of people of the church. Let's hear how Jacob handles this one.
One idea that's very common in our culture is that poverty is caused by lack of money, and that's a really stupid idea because money is very difficult to handle. I had clients who were, drug addicts, and the worst possible thing that could happen to them was that they got some money. They're just done. First of all, they were hanging around with people who were little on the sociopathic side, and so especially if they weren't that bright and couldn't defend themselves very well, as soon as they got money, well, it was off to the bar with all the friends. And one guy I remember in particular, every time he got his disability check, he was gone for 5 days. You usually found him in a ditch.
Governments and NGOs have spent trillions on poverty. Maybe the church is focused primarily on treating the root causes of poverty instead of just throwing money at it like everyone else.
Okay, Colch, take this first one. I know you can do this one.
Okay, so I didn't like Peterson's thing. It's like if you see a homeless person and people will say like, "Well, I'm not gonna give him any money because I don't know what he's gonna do with it. He could go buy beer, he could go buy cigarettes, he could do this, he could do that." You're just assuming, that these people are gonna do things that you disagree with, and so you use that as a justification not to give them, and that's a stupid thing to do. And then I kind of agree that if we know what the root causes of poverty are, we should put our money towards that. But at the same point, those people still have needs and things that need to be met, and so we should give regardless.
This is basically Jacob is a big fan of the prosperity gospel. In other words, if you live the gospel, that the Lord will then bless you. So he's saying the root causes of poverty is not enough people are Mormons. That's what he's literally saying here. But the problem here is that, again, we have no demonstration that becoming a Mormon will help you get out of poverty or will improve your situation. In fact, we have many indications that Utah, for instance, is of the highest bankruptcy in the entire United States because it appears, can't prove a causation, but I can prove a correlation that giving 10% of your income to a mega corporation has a detrimental effect to families and their ability to pay their bills. That's why bankruptcy is so high in Utah. Okay, that's a major problem. And so the root causes of poverty are not joining the church doesn't help fight the root causes of poverty. Now, and the other thing is nobody is saying that you should just hand out cash bills to people in poor countries. This is a straw man argument. We're talking about giving microloans to people so that they can invest in their businesses and then repay them in developing countries. We're talking about providing clean sanitation to people so that they don't get sick when they drink and so that they can work, providing basic medical care to people, especially women, so that they can control their reproduction so that they can be better functioning members of society instead of having a lot of issues. We're talking about making sure that the unsheltered population, especially in the United States, is really acute. We're providing housing for them. We're not just talking about giving bills to a crack addict. This is a really bad apologetic of saying, well, we shouldn't just give out cash to people because it might harm them. Nobody's saying that's a straw man. This is a really bad argument, and it's a bad apologetic to show that the church gives very little amount out of its giant wealth and coffers, and this is a bad apologetic to try to take care of that. I don't like it. Okay, next is the anti-Mormon Burger King. Okay,
yeah, this is from Ward Radio. This is the guy from Apologia Church.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Mark.
Jeff Durbin.
Thanks so much, Mark, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Okay, the anti-Mormon Burger King. Okay, let's check this out here.
The Collision episode, they just did this. The name of the video is Debunking the Anti-Mormon Burger King of Apologia Studios.
Why on earth Burger King? Why is Burger King? Why is Burger King coming after our boy Quakuel? You know what I'm saying? Why are they coming after Quakuel and Luke?
Debunking the Anti-Mormon Burger King of Apologia Studios. That would be yours truly.
Of what in the world? Coach, you've got to explain this one more time to me. I don't keep up on this careful enough. What is this all about? I'm sorry, I missed this one.
So Ward Radio will do these debunkings of evangelical people, and they had a time where they had some episodes going back and forth with Jeff Durbin, the Burger King guy from Apologia.
Oh, okay.
Church. I think Kwaku even went on and did a debate with him live in person. So there's some history there, and they're just in typical Ward Radio fashion, they're going into ad hominem attack. And Jeff is responding because they did a whole episode where they said he looked like the Burger King guy and made fun of him. And
well, he kind of does look like the Burger King guy.
And that's why it's funny. It was actually I don't really enjoy watching Ward Radio episodes, but I kind of like that one.
I think if you understand all of the jokes behind it, I think it is a pretty solid short, though. But you do need to be
that one's not bad.
No, I think that's his best short so far, to be honest with you. Okay, now this one is going to be controversial here. Elder Bednar condemns COVID lockdowns. I do have a bit to say about this one that I think might not make me a lot of favors. Once again, though, I would like to say, and no joking aside, Elder Bednar is my favorite apostle, and the reason for that is because he gives us a lot of insights into what happens behind the scenes at church headquarters, and I really appreciate that. He is by far the most transparent of the Q15.
He gives me the most content for my channel, so I like him too.
Absolutely.
Drawing proper lines to protect both public health and religious exercise in a pandemic is very challenging. But we cannot deny, and we should not forget, the speed and intensity with which government power was used to shut down fundamental aspects of religious exercise. These decisions and regulations were unprecedented. The right to gather lies at the very heart of religious freedom. For nearly 2 months, Americans and many others throughout the free world learned firsthand what it means for government to directly prohibit the free exercise of religion. Never again must the fundamental right to worship be trivialized below the ability to buy gasoline.
Okay, now, first of all, before we react to that, hey, Chris over there at Porch Time, and I do like the Porch Time program. It's growing on me more and more. Chris, we had Chris on one time on the Mormon News Roundup of a long lost episode, and that was a good episode. And Porch Time is a fun show. If you go over there, you got to watch a few episodes to kind of get into the groove of it, but it does grow on you. What do you think, Culch?
Yeah, I've been in the last couple live streams that they've done, and I'm enjoying it more.
I am.
Thanks, Chris. That was super nice of you. Thank you.
Really appreciate that, Chris. I will bring Flip on for that amount. If you want me to bring Flip back, I will bring him back for that amount. I can endure a few Hitler jokes or a couple of swear words for that amount of money. No problem. Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate that. Everybody out there, go over to Porch Time. Check it out. It's kind of like your first drink. Porch Time is kind of like your first drink of coffee. It tastes, doesn't taste that great the first time, but after you have a few drinks of it, you start to warm up to it. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's a very kind of chill show. It's just like a bunch of guys hanging out, and they put on clips and things that they want, kind of like what we're doing, but just on stuff that they've found during the week that they think is cool. They did some funny clips. They talked about that ray gun lady, the crappy breakdancer woman. That was funny. I watched that last night.
That was good. That was good. Thanks again, Chris. Really appreciate that. Now, getting back to Elder Bednar here and the COVID lockdowns. Can you give the first reaction to this? What do you think about David Bednar saying that the government shouldn't be telling the church to do COVID lockdowns? What do you think?
Yeah, taking myself back to 2020 when the pandemic happened, I definitely have a little bit of a different opinion on it now. But at the time, it was just, for me, it was very scary. I had a young kid, me and my wife, our ability to work wasn't going to be happening. We were trapped in our house for like a month straight, not knowing what was going to happen. And so I was just really scared. So I took the health stuff really seriously. I masked up when I went places. And I was pissed at people who didn't want to mask up, to be honest. But I have a little bit of a different take on that stuff now, that there is individual freedom to do things. They have rights to. And honestly, if I could go back, I think I would respect that a little bit more. And that would go hand in hand with church services and things that were locked down as well. For me at the time, I thought the general health of the population was more important than that. So I kind of supported all that stuff, but I think I would be a little more middle of the road these days.
Well, Bednar here, first of all, you were in Florida, which was like a really lockdown straight, right? DeSantis was like serious about these mask mandates, right?
Initially, but then DeSantis kind of changed tune, and Florida, for the most part, was a pretty free place to be. There weren't tons and tons of restrictions, but initially, just like anywhere else, there were a lot.
Now, I usually don't agree with Susan's husband too often, but I'm going to have to tell you that I generally agree with what he's saying here. I do not see the role of the government as restricting the private assembly of citizens. If I want to be dumb enough to be in a closed environment like a temple with consenting adults and to endanger ourselves for negative health repercussions, I don't see it as the government's role to protect me from my own stupidity. And I do understand that there's probably going to be some pushback on there. It's kind of like seatbelt laws. If I'm driving a car by myself in my own car, I shouldn't have to be forced to wear a seatbelt. If I'm not stupid and, I get in an accident and I hurt myself, that's on me. Same with motorcycle motorcycle helmet laws. I don't see the government's role as protecting people from their own stupidity. And that's what I really see the COVID lockdowns as. I think that people should wear masks as a general rule, and the government can control what happens in government facilities when you go into the DMV or, Amtrak. The government controls Amtrak, or federal. The government can have federal, on military bases, you had to wear masks and things like that. Where the government has property and has control, sure, they can pass policies and procedures. I don't see it as the government's role to tell a Mormon temple that you need to stop doing business. That's not the role of government in my mind. I think that's an overreach. I'm sure that's not going to win me a lot of friends, but what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, to an extent, I think I am on the same wavelength as you these days. I think my objection to that, if I was talking to myself from a few years back, would be that if you went and did that, you're basically creating a space where people could get infected. And if it just stayed with you and it was your sickness to get and it didn't affect anybody else, sure. But if you get sick from someone at the temple, you go home, you can pass that on to somebody else. So it's not as cut and dry as just like, I can wear my seatbelt or not wear my seatbelt. That's not going to affect anybody else. So I don't know. It's a tough situation, but I think these days I would probably be more along the lines of like, let them worship.
Look, I'm a conservative at heart. I know a lot of people might not believe that, and I've kind of been dragged to the left, really kicking and screaming. I'm really not of my own free will and choice, but the libertarian inside of me recoils when I feel like the government is overreaching. And if there has to be a mask mandate or a shutdown of that nature, it should be done at the lowest possible level, not at the federal government, not even at the state level. This should be decided by city councils, in which those are our neighbors in our cities that we're in, not at a state level, not at a federal level, but at the lowest possible level. That's my opinion. I'm sure that's not going to win me a lot of favors. We got about 4 more shorts left to go here. Let's keep on going. Utah March for Life at the Capitol.
January 20th, Utahns from across the state will gather at the Utah State Capitol to march for the 180,000 Utah babies that have been killed by abortion since 1973. The Family Proclamation calls on us to promote measures designed to maintain and strengthen the family. And the March for Life Utah is just that, a unique opportunity to stand for life and family. So we hope you will join us January 20th at 11 a.m. at the Utah State Capitol for the March for Life Utah. For more information, go to marchforlifeutah.org.
Where is Flip when you need him for these March for Life video content? Boy, we can really use Flip's analysis at this time.
And Maven. Let's get them both in here.
Yes, definitely Jacob is a very conservative, and that I believe he follows the church's position on abortion. He might even be more further to the right. I'm not sure, but
he might be.
He might very well might be. And that's the idea that the only exceptions for abortion are really rape and incest, the life of the mother, and the non-viability of the fetus. I believe those are the 3 things that are carved out in the church's handbook. But the problem is here in the last week, by the way, in the Utah, is that they've overturned all of it, and they basically made it so that it's almost impossible now to have reproductive or abortive services in the state of Utah, except for in the very most extreme circumstances. This is going to lead, in my mind, to a great deal of human suffering and possibly even death. I look at it as a very significant bad idea. What do you think about this last short here?
Yeah, I mean it's right up Jacob's alley, and I got nothing wrong with nothing against the pro-life people. I can understand their point of view. I lean more towards a woman's choice. I personally am not a fan of abortion, like elective abortion. I don't like it. If I'm not a woman, but I'd like to think if I was, I wouldn't want to get one. But when I really come down to thinking of it, am I going to take away someone's choice? I kind of err on the side of no. And that's where I am. I don't like it, but I'll support someone who chooses to do it.
Very well. Okay. We've got about 3 shorts left to go. The next one is Consecration. We all give our lives to something.
Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 100 million? What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale. If your price is not your life, then you are for sale. So, if you're going to be a truth teller, your price has to be your life. I can't surround myself with people whose price is not their life, because the enemy, whatever the enemy is, whether it be physical, legal, spiritual, will will attack the vulnerability of the person who can be compromised. So you get real spiritual real fast if you're going to do this type of work.
We all consecrate our lives to something. The only question is what? What have you consecrated your life to?
Do we all consecrate our lives to something, Culch?
We don't. Mormons do. They consecrate their life to the church, but not everybody consecrates their life to something.
Yeah, absolutely not. There's a couple of things. It says you should only surround yourself with people who are willing to give their lives for their beliefs. I mean, I believe that Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States.
United States.
But I'm not willing to give my life for that belief. If somebody put a gun to my head and said, "Will you deny it?" I would do that in a heartbeat. I believe that the Earth is a globe. That's that's something that I have strong evidence for. But I'm not willing to die for all of my beliefs. All beliefs are not willing to sacrifice yourself. You don't need to surround yourself with people who are willing to die for every single belief that they have. That is an unreasonable proposition and makes absolutely no sense.
It also, to me, reinforces the all or nothing sort of thing in Mormonism, that, you have to give everything you have. You are either all in or you're not. And
Right.
some people think that that's how you Mormon, that you've got to be fully committed. And that's how it was for me when I was a member. I felt like I had to be doing everything and giving it my all. And if I messed up, I felt like I was a complete failure, and I'd like tailspin for a while, and then I'd get back to it. And it was just a lot of this back and forth, and it really wasn't healthy. It wasn't a good mindset to have.
I kind of look at this as, I don't know, maybe mind reading, but a little bit of a flex where Jacob says, I've consecrated my life, all of my talents, all of my possessions, everything with which the Lord might bless me or with which he has already blessed me, to an organization that is supposed to be the kingdom of God on earth. Look what I've consecrated my life to that has meaning and purpose. You haven't made any consecrations, therefore you're less than me. Now, I may be projecting a little bit there, but that's the vibe that I get, at least from this video.
Well, he says you have consecrated, but just to something else. And it's like he says, he always says everything is a religion too. Like if you support LGBTQ, that's your religion. If you are an ex-Mormon, that's your religion. It's not our fucking religion, dude. It's not. You have a religion. We are out of religion. It's not. But he wants to equate it. He wants to make everything the same. I've consecrated my life to something. So have you. It's just a different thing. I'm this religion. You're this religion. It's like, no.
Yeah, Jacob says, I worship Elohim and believe in Kolob. You worship science and materialism. So no, it's not a worship. It's not a religion. The lack of belief is not a belief. That's the real fundamental here. I don't have a religion in the same way that he does. I don't believe in Iron Age informed nonsense. Everything that I believe, I do so for good reasons, evidence, or data, not just because I have wishful thinking or I place my faith in invisible deities who are playing cosmic hide and seek.
Well, that's your religion, Divas. Data, science, evidence.
Well, I believe that religion is really a set of beliefs that is usually deals with the soul and the afterlife. None of the things that I've mentioned deal with any soul or afterlife whatsoever. It's not a religion. So I know you're playing devil's advocate. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The next one, rest in peace, New Atheist Movement. Boy, he is going to stick it to the New Atheists. Let's see what we got.
Richard Dawkins, the author of the book The God Delusion and the de facto leader of the New Atheist Movement, had some really interesting things to say this Easter Sunday.
I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense.
They say that the New Atheist Movement was born on September 11th, 2001, but I think it just died on Easter Sunday, 2024.
There's nothing like talk about 9/11 with a smile on your face like part of a punchline, is there?
No.
Yeah, is it too soon for a 9/11 joke here? Look at, he's talking about 9/11. He's got this big smirk on his face.
In that sense.
They say that the New Atheist Movement was born on September 11th, 2001.
Yeah, that's not a joke, buddy. I don't know if the New Atheist Movement was born on that particular date, and I don't see how it matters.
Who's they? Who's they?
Yeah, I don't really know why that matters. And as far as Richard Dawkins is concerned, of him saying that he's kind of like a cultural Christian, I find a great deal of solidarity with that, because I still go to church socials. I still go to the barbecue. I'll still go to the talent show. I still play ward ball, and I'll still go occasionally on Christmas or Easter. And I love the hymns of the Restoration. Those have a great deal of meaning to me. I have a musical background. And so, I will queue up. I was even watching some general conference, some Mormon Tabernacle Choir just today. It's very moving. The music that's associated, that you were raised in primary and you sang so many times, those have a great deal of meaning. Just because you have a solidarity with people around you doesn't mean that atheism is somehow debunked or dead. I don't understand how that's rest in peace atheism. I don't get it.
No, he's just, the guy said nice things about, Christian stuff. So Jacob's like, this is the king atheist saying that like Christianity is good, so his movement's dead. I don't know. I had a professor in grad school who was he was an atheist. He's a behaviorist. So he believes that like God has nothing to do with anything, but he grew up in the South, and he would say, I like to go back to church and I can sit in the pews and I can hear the music and I can have all the same feelings that I did before. He goes, but I know what it is. I know it's not God doing it. It's, it's me reacting to stimuli in the environment. And so I can understand what Richard Dawkins is kind of saying in there. And I think Jacob's running a little bit too much with it.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I consider myself to be a cultural Mormon. My name is still on the rolls, and I don't want my name to be removed off the rolls. If my stake president or bishop is watching this broadcast, my membership means a great deal to me, because I'm literally a 7th generation Latter-day Saint. And, even though I don't go to church very often, it still means a great deal to me, just like Richard Dawkins. He grew up, Richard Dawkins did grow up atheist, and he grew up a lot in Africa, but still, the hymns and the music and the feeling that you get in the community. See, this is what the atheist community simply cannot reproduce, is the community feeling that you have of singing songs, of coming together and saying, let's be good people. The Thrive community has never been able to, replicate what the church has been able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 3, I think we got 2 more. Dan McClellan is not a scholar. Whoa. Okay. Let's check it out.
Guess what he is.
Follows
one more time. Here we go.
Dan McClellan likes to claim that he follows the data over dogma. But if that's the case, then why are his opinions so predictable?
Myths and the theories and the frameworks that they had anciently to explain sexual desire have absolutely no relevance whatsoever to anyone's sexual ethic today. Hey everybody, I am frequently asked what the Bible's position on abortion is, and there is no such position in the Bible. Whiteness is a religion in and of itself that a lot of American Christians are committed to.
You see, Dan is an activist against conservative evangelicalism. And Latter-day Saints often appreciate his content because sometimes we have critiques of overzealous conservative evangelicalism. But let's stop pretending that Dan is some objective scholar. He's an activist. That's why his opinions are so predictable.
Okay, so is he primarily a scholar, or is he primarily an activist?
To me, he's a scholar. He's a super smart dude. He's got the degrees to back it up. He's 100% a scholar.
Yeah, he's definitely a scholar. He definitely, though he definitely has a point of view that he will also promote, though, without question. And when he gets out of his scholarly repertoire and kind of gets into the social issues of certain things about, Olympic boxers or the assassination of Trump and some little bit weird conspiracy theories, when he gets in above his depth, he does tend to get a little bit unraveled at times. But overall, huge fan, big fan of him.
Yeah, but Jacob makes it sound like it's 2 different things and that's all you could be. You can only be a scholar or you can only be an activist.
I mean,
look, you could be a scholar who engages in some activism.
Look, everybody's got their biases. I spent a lot of time in higher education and academia. I published quite a few papers. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I even have a couple of books that I wrote. Look, everybody brings a bias to the table. And I think that Dan is pretty honest about some of his biases that he brings. I mean, that's why he comments on some of the social aspects that don't have anything to do with his scholarly degree. So I don't see that this is some kind of a boogeyman. What Jacob really is saying here is Jacob doesn't have those credentials. Jacob doesn't have the knowledge. And he really wants to tear Dan down to the level that he's at. I'm not at Dan's level either, but I don't pretend to be in the league and to be able to tear him down. I wouldn't even try to attempt it.
No, Dan is like a super smart guy, and Jacob knows it, and he knows he wouldn't stand a chance with him like going toe to toe. But he mentions that Dan is predictable. But you know who's predictable? Jacob is fucking predictable. He's going to talk about hating LGBTQ people. He's going to target Julie Hanks. He's going to target Dan McClellan, or he's going to challenge someone to a debate. And like that's Jacob in a nutshell.
Yeah, Dan is predictable in that he will bring a scholarly analysis to every single one of his issues, and that he will look at them through a lens that is free, usually of any bias whatsoever. And he tries to really make the Bible, for me, every time I watch one of his videos, I literally learn something every time, as opposed to going to like Mormon Sunday school where you could listen to 1,000 lessons and not learn anything new. Every 2-minute clip I get of Dan McClellan, I'm learning new things, and that's why I really appreciate his content a great deal. Okay. Okay. What about taking off your garments here? This is look at this. Look at this. Polygamy deniers should take your garments off. He looks confused. You did that video on him being confused. Do you remember that?
Oh, he's super confused. Yes. Jacob is confused. He's also standing really close to the camera. I noticed this in the last episode too. He's doing this new thing that rather than sitting, he stands up with the camera, but like he's right there, and the light is really bright on his head too. So if Jacob's watching, just move back a little bit, pal. It's going to help you out.
I will agree real quick before we watch this clip here. Jared Higdon says Dan is predictable in that he'll renegotiate the text in favor of modern progressive sensibilities. I would say that's pretty accurate as far as not necessarily renegotiate the text, but he will interpret the text in favor of modern progressive sensibilities. I think that's pretty fair. Okay, let's hear what we got. To take off your garments. Boy, okay, let's see what we got here.
Some people in the polygamy denial camp are asking people to do some kind of weird things.
I was introduced to a podcast by Phil Davis, and he told me to go home and do a specific thing and then to pray. And so I went home and I did the specific thing that
Which was?
Take off your garments.
Okay.
I prayed and got a powerful prompting, inspiration.
I think we should be aware that not all spirits are the spirit of the Lord. And when someone is asking you to take off your garments before you pray, I think that might be a red flag.
Well, my first question here, Culch, is what is a spirit? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this. What is a spirit? Is that like a genie, ghoul, goose, demon? I'm not sure what a spirit is. Can you clear it up for us?
I can't. But yeah, that's the question you want to ask. Like, what is a spirit in the first place? Because Jacob thinks there's good ones and there's bad ones, and they're both going to talk to you, and you got to know which one is which.
Yeah, I've never encountered a spirit. I don't know what it is. I talked about actually at the beginning of the debate, by the way, when I was in debate club back in junior high school, and the debate topic was, were ghosts real? And I took the position of yes, and I lost that debate. So that shows you how good of a debater I am, to be sure. But as far as about being confused here, I know you did a quick post here. This is a quick digression here. Jacob, he gets confused easily, doesn't he?
Super easy.
Yeah, let's check it out here. The Thoughtless Taint is confused over at the Cultural Hall channel. Let's check it out.
In the church with confusion. Are you confused? Feeling confused? Seeming confusion? Confused? Confused gender? Confuses me. Confusing. Is this not confusing? Confusion, so much confusion. Confuses members. It's confusing. Deep confusion. Deeply confuses me. Confusion, how confused we all are. Confused. Are we also confused? Confusion, confused. And I am deeply, deeply confused.
That is absolute gold. He definitely is confused. And in some of the debates that he's done, he's actually done a polygamy denier debates with Jacob Isbell, right?
Yeah, he did. That was a good one, moderated by Cardinellis.
Right, and he took the position that Joseph Smith was actually a polygamist who engaged in these marriages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we talk about polygamists telling you to take your garments off. That is some major cringe there. That is crazy.
I mean, it's weird. It's weird. And honestly, when they said it, I was thinking of, and this is going to be for people who know Blink 182, I was thinking take off your garments and jacket, because there's a Blink album called Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, like a jacket that you wear, not So that's what I thought of.
Everything goes back to a parody for you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're always looking for the parody stuff. But as far as, look, if you have to take off your underwear to talk to somebody, that I agree. Again, with Jacob, I agree. That is a red flag.
It's
That
weird.
is an issue.
It's
no.
weird.
No,
But it doesn't have anything to do with spirits.
No, I still don't know what a spirit is. If Jacob can react to this video, let us know what a spirit is. I'd be very interested to figure that out. I've never been able to figure that out.
I've drank a spirit, but I haven't felt a spirit or talked to a spirit.
Yeah. So okay. Now, do therapists help here? I believe he lives in Reno, Nevada. So occasionally you see him walking around out there. And I want to say that he's in his father-in-law's plumbing business. Is that right? I believe that's what he does for his job.
I think he does. He's not a plumber, but I think he works in the office side, the admin side of it.
And I know that he also runs at least one Airbnb as well on the side as well. And
does he? I would love to stay at the Thoughtless Taint Airbnb in Reno. That'd be fun.
I know that he has at least one of those Airbnbs because I saw.
Maybe we could get a discount road trip.
Without question, I've got enough money to stay at there thanks to the super chats out there like Chris Hanna.
Chris, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these other folks out here, I really appreciate that. I want to thank Theotis once again and Mark Crispin. Thanks a lot. Now I have enough money to stay at the Thoughtless Taints Airbnb. That would be a dream come true for me for sure. Do therapists help? Just real quick before we watch this, I don't think you've seen this before. What do you think the answer is going to be when he's talking about therapists?
It's probably going to lean towards no, would be my guess.
The spirit of discernment is still strong with you, my friend.
So I had a thought this morning as I've been out on my walk, and that is that therapy, unhinged from moral truth, is cancer.
Wait a minute. What is he trying to say? Can you interpret that? Therapy unhinged from moral truth is cancer. What is he trying to say?
Well, it sounds like he's saying that therapy can be good, but the caveat is if it's unhinged from moral truth, and whatever Jacob's definition of that is, I don't know if he tells us or not.
Yeah, he's going to get into that. Let's keep playing. Let's keep playing it.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of therapy, but I have to ask the question, if you're not helping someone move towards some conception of the good, then are you really helping them? Or are you just telling them what they want so that they'll give you money? I mean, it's the difference between giving someone a drug that they need versus the drug that they want. And that's the difference between helping someone or causing an addiction. It's like the difference between being a doctor or a drug dealer. And if your moral philosophy is not based on something transcendent, then is it really logically coherent? Anyway, it's something to ponder.
Okay, I believe your background, you've got some background in therapy, don't you, Culch?
Sort of not the therapy that most people think of. Behavioral therapy, but not like counseling and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about basically what I get from this is President Nelson 2 general conferences ago said, never take counsel from those who don't believe. If your therapist is not a Mormon and is leading you towards truth, then your therapist is not doing a good job. And you should never do anything that is divorced from Mormonism. I mean, does your therapist really have to be a Mormon in order to have a good experience? No, I've had lots of therapists and almost none of them were Latter-day Saints. And in fact, I've had the best interactions with people who weren't Latter-day Saints. You don't need to lead someone towards truth. I mean, if somebody is having an issue in their life, you can just help them resolve that issue independent of some larger scheme of truth. He's really trying to smear therapists who really spend a great deal of their lives trying to help people. And they've helped me a great deal, although some of the LDS ones actually probably did more harm than good. But they try to help people in the best way that they can. The idea that therapy is no good, I think that's a bad construct. This is getting a Scientologist vibe for me, where they're also poo-poo therapists as well. This is not a good video.
Yeah, I think he's cool with church therapists.
Right.
But probably if you aren't a church therapist, he probably thinks that you're not a therapist, you're a drug dealer, not a doctor.
Yeah, that's troubling.
As a Mormon, I was saying, well, this is all true because I prayed about the Book of Mormon and the Book of Mormon's true. And so it's all true. But a Catholic was using that very same logic to say, well, I understand that this interpretation of the Bible is true. It's just, that's what religions are doing. And it's all just based on who says they're actually in touch with God.
Yeah, that's exactly the logic that Thomas Aquinas used in his Summa Theologica. What a profound display of arrogant
ignorance about the Christian intellectual tradition. Just because you had a brain-dead testimony doesn't mean the rest of us do.
Brain dead testimony. That's the first time I've ever heard of a brain dead testimony.
That must be what I had.
Well, this is bordering to the no true Scotsman fallacy. If you don't have a testimony, if you didn't stay in the church, or if you question it, then your testimony wasn't a true testimony. It's kind of like the evangelical once saved, always saved sort of thing. You were never a true believer. If you really had a testimony, you would never leave. Instead, your shallow testimony is just brain dead.
Yeah, this one I knew wasn't going to be good. When I saw it was Haley Rawl on there, and knowing that Ward Radio already did a whole episode attacking her, I was like, it's going to be something bad, and I get what he was saying at first, but then he throws in the brain dead testimony, it's just like a little dig, and it's like, you're an asshole, dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's a serious ad hominem attacks. And you'll notice that I've tried in this entire presentation of 2 hours, I've never insulted Jacob at all. I've tried to critique his ideas. I never said that he was an idiot or that he was stupid or anything like that. I've said
Let me change. He's acting like an asshole. There you go. He's not an asshole. He's acting like one.
I guess that's the difference between the two of us. Is that I generally try to avoid that, but you do take them on straight on, don't you?
I do to an extent. I don't try to be real bad, because if I wanted to, I could go hard. But I think I kind of believe that you're going to get what you give. So I give a little, knowing I'm going to get a little, rather than do a lot. And honestly, there's a lot that people could say about Jacob that, and there's a lot that people do, probably, if they've been reading the comments. But things about personal appearance and stuff like that, I'm never going to go there.
Yeah, you did a whole episode here on Haley Rawl with the Girls Camp shout out on the Cultural Hall.
Yeah, Kwaku and Carden really quick. So Kwaku and Carden did this episode where they just ripped on her, and more so Kwaku. He was kind of leading the charge, and Carden and Jonah the Baker Barnes were jumping in here and there. But this one just pissed me off, so I did a whole kind of clap back episode at him. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think we're gonna basically let's do a final wrap up on all of Jacob Hansen's The Thoughtless Taint shorts. What is the general sum up of all of these shorts? What is the general message that you get from all of these shorts? What is he trying to? Is there any coherence, or are they just kind of random?
I mean, they're random to a certain extent. You get all the flavors. You get the anti-LGBT stuff. You get the attacking academics. So you get him going after Dan McClellan. You get him going after Julie Hanks. You get a smidge of him debating with evangelicals, which is what you get with Jacob. So I think, if you go through it, it gives you a good overview of what his channel is kind of all about. And then you can kind of take your opinion of him based off that.
Yeah, the biggest where he really lobs his most verbal attacks, it's really not against people who do the horrors on this planet. Vladimir Putin, Bashar al-Assad, Saddam Hussein, the vicious killers of the day, the people who really perpetrate the evil on this planet. He doesn't save his vitriol for them. Who does he save it for? Haley Rawl, because she was a member who questions her testimony. Jim Bennett, because he's a progmo. Dan McClellan, because he doesn't always drink the church's Kool-Aid. And the other members of the church that we saw in here as well. That's who he likes to go after, is people. He likes to be really kind of like the curator of the orthodoxy for Mormonism and say that my way is the true way and the only good way to be a Mormon. And everyone else is leading you astray. And there's a lot of stupid people out there, but if you engage with my content with some of his high verbiage, the verbiosity that he uses, his verbose nature, and quoting Thomas Aquinas and things like that, that he will lead you to the further light and knowledge that the Father was promised to send. And anyone else out there is basically counterfeit. He really likes to hammer home the marriage, the identitarianism, the idea that you're supposed to be a child of God, don't be gay. Anti-trans. I'm surprised that he didn't talk more about anti-trans, because that's usually one.
Yeah, we didn't see anything in there about that, but he has full-on episodes where he goes after the trans community.
Yeah, he definitely hits the trans, and there's no doubt about that. But that's the basic sum up here. I think we've done a pretty good job of of handling Jacob Hansen.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a video that is going to come out. That's we played 2 minutes of it at the beginning of this clip. That is going to take more issue with Jacob Hansen. I'm sure you're going to be hate watching him as well over at the Cults channel, right?
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody out there. Thanks so much for this live stream. Really appreciate it. That we're going to do some Real Talk Mormonism. I don't see anybody who wants to come on as far as calling in. This is a call-in show. Didn't see anybody come on, but that's okay. Next time we do a Real Talk Mormonism, you can be sure to come on. If you can hit the like, hit the subscription. Really appreciate that. We both have a Patreon site. What do you get over on your Patreon site over at your site there, Coach?
You get early access to my videos. I try to post them over there like a day before. I've got like some longer form parody songs that I've only posted over there. And then I try to, there's a lot more reaching out and one-to-one interaction with members. So yeah, Patreon's a cool place if you want to go over there to support me. I've also got shirts. I've got merch through Exmo Shirts if you want to grab a Cultural Hall shirt. And, donations are always appreciated, never required.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. I've got one other caller that's coming on. Coach, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate that. And thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Let's get one more caller on here. And that's Big Chris. What'd you think of tonight's episode, Big Chris?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Hey, good episode. Yeah, I mean, that guy, there's a whole long list of things I don't miss about church, preparing a lesson or the stress of giving a talk, man, those were rough times. And then putting on a face, every Sunday and every activity. But guys like Jacob, that are just at a higher level, that's up there too with something I don't miss, just a level of, and I think that's over, very an umbrella thing is just the overall arrogance that the church emboldens people with, because we have the truth. We're the only church, right? Everybody else is in the wrong. So look out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the church really teaches you is you were saved for the last day. You're Saturday's warrior. You're one of only a few 100,000 temple recommend holding members of the Melchizedek priesthood on this planet. The Constitution is going to hang by a thread, and it's the elders of Israel who will keep it all together. Therefore, I mean, you've got the truth, and you've got to spread that word. Everybody else's life and eternal salvation is in peril, and if it isn't for people like Jacob, the entire world will burn. That's the type of mentality that the church really inculcates in its followers, and it can lead to incredibly harmful outcomes, and it can lead to people like, I don't know, Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow and a lot of other. I mean, once you start abdicating your authority to invisible voices in your head for no good reasons, devoid of data and evidence, where does that end? And the real answer to the question is it doesn't end anywhere, and it doesn't end anywhere good.
Yeah, creepy stuff. And I think I was introduced to this on my mission. A Southern California guy not taken with a brain dead testimony that we gotta. That's gold right there. Brain dead testimony that hits the nail on the head for, boom. That's an epiphany right there. But anyway, I was just, a majority of the Americans I was in South America, and just a bunch of good old Utah boys that were better than me. And that was kind of the first experience I had. So it was, then I moved back, down here, but every once in a while you bump into somebody who's practicing a little bit better than you. And it's just, it's laughable now and embarrassing. I keep using that word, but it's all good.
I mean, Jacob really takes his religion very, very seriously, and that's the result of it. When you read the family proclamation and assume that it is God breathed and that it is inspired by on high, then that's where you take your marching orders from. And when the prophet speaks, the thinking has been done. It's really people like Jacob that are going to give the church they're the core of the church. Those right-wing followers of the church. They're what people are expecting to see, and they are really effective in what they do. I mean, his channel is huge. He's got 20,000 subscribers. I mean, my channel has 4,000. I mean, a lot of people find resonance in this type of I don't know if it's a bully mentality, but it's a really a righteous sort of proselytization, a holier than thou stance. I mean, a lot of people find resonance with that.
Yeah, I'm guilty of watching. Every once in a while, I'll throw on a little Ward radio just to remind myself, that I did the right thing. But I did see a video of Jacob Hansen with one of his brothers, and I think one of his brothers actually has a channel that's not quite as prestigious as Mormon News Roundup. But man, I got to tell you, it was the worst podcast. I made it maybe 5-10 minutes, and his brother, bless his heart, but he's got no personality. So,
this is him. He's got.
Dude, yeah. How did you do that so freaking fast?
Oh, I don't know. I can, Chris, I can see around corners and make you smarter. I'll just put it that way.
Blowing my mind, but that's totally the video I saw, and it's just that was rough.
Yeah, Forrest. I like Forrest shorts. Yeah, Forrest.
That was
Hansen.
The coolest part. Was his name?
Yeah, I like Forrest's shorts a great deal. I'm not as big of a fan of his longer content, but I really do like Forrest's shorts. He is known as the Latter-day Skeptic, as Culch is pointing out here. But everyone in Jacob's family, he's one of 8 children. All of them, except for him, have left the church. What do you think about that, Chris? What do you think?
I think his parents did a terrible job.
What do you mean by that?
I'm being completely facetious, but
right. Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe according to how's that Thanksgiving work out? That's got to be some weird stuff. Especially, you said he works for his in-laws, so whatever. Don't get me started on nepotism and not making it on your own, but whatever.
Yeah, Jacob Hansen, he talks about his let's see if I can find this. This will be a little bit harder here, but he actually talks about his family here in his faith journey. If I can find it, this is going to be harder to find here. But you
didn't read my mind on that one.
Yeah, he actually brings up. He has a couple of pictures of his family that he brings up. Maybe I can find them one moment. Just give me a second here, and let me see if I can find this for a moment. Hold on. Let me see. I got to look at my history here and see if I can find it, because I was actually watching that not that long ago. Oh, part 1. Yeah, here we go. I got it here. Asking you shall receive, because he talks about his family and how it fell apart here. He talks about how, first of all, he was a Mormon mission. He served very honorably, and he came home, had some faith challenges. I wouldn't call it a faith crisis, but then he talks about how at family reunions, how it can be quite awkward. Here it is with all the Hansens. This is a white and delightsome family. Is that confirmed here, Chris? Okay, tough jokes. That's a tough joke. I appreciate that. Now, here is all of his brothers and sisters right here. This is a handsome family, first of all. Don't you?
No, it's not. It's a Hansen family.
So they're all holding up fingers as to where their order is in line. So 1, 2, Jacob Hansen is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's Forrest. You were talking about him earlier. Every single one of these guys was born in the covenant to a good Latter-day Saint family. Many of them are returned missionaries, and not one of them, except for Jacob, is still in the church. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is absolutely crazy that so many people are leaving the church. And honestly, look, people think that I'm going to rejoice over this family getting broken up, and how there's, now there's going to be conflicts at Thanksgiving, and how, all these people now have their own path. I don't find any great rejoicing over that. In some ways, honestly, Chris, I'm sad about that. That's a sad thing. I didn't want to see that this family, break up their faith. I don't know, call me crazy. He also talks about some of his extended family. Here's the extended family. It's not just his siblings that have left the church. It's his extended family also that has left the church. And that's really broken him up. I mean, he's had a lot of, he talks about in this episode how he had long conversations with his older brothers, and that he wasn't able to save his older brother from leaving the church. Anyway, any last thoughts on Jacob Hansen here before I let you go here, Big Chris?
No, I appreciate your time. You guys. Oh, hey, I think was it the last episode where those Elder Gong videos, dude, those were great.
Yeah, as a matter of fact here, Big Chris, I actually reached out to Ryan McKnight. He was on the Mormon News Roundup once upon a time, and I just texted in today. Ryan McKnight is the one who released those videos in 2015 under the Mormon Leaks moniker, and I asked him if he would come back on with me and review some of those old videos, and he said that he would. And we're going to set up a time where he can actually walk us through some of those old videos. I think that's going to be interesting. I really like those videos. That gives you a lot of good information, doesn't it?
I mean, what is that? That's like Elder Gong giving everybody like the Saturday Night Live weekly news update, and they're just sitting back and talking about they knew a guy in World War II that I knew a guy in World War II that dressed like a woman.
Yeah, those guys are incredibly out of touch, as we find from those
Completely
videos.
out of touch, and they're supposed to be ahead of the game, man.
Yeah, we'll watch some more of
backwards.
those. We'll do some more Mormon. Did you like the format of this, where we reviewed some shorts? We'll do that for some other content too.
Hey, I'm easy to please, man.
I really appreciate it. Thanks
There
for
was
stopping by.
one other thing. There was a good was it Mormon Story? Somebody, who's that guy? You got to get him on. Oh shoot, Master Peace. Have you ever reached out to that guy?
Oh, Ron Jorgensen hosted an episode of the Mormon News Roundup. I've had him on. So
Okay, yeah, I got to go back. But man, he did one not too long ago where just failed prophecies. And I think there could be a whole episode on just stupid crap like the Quakers on the moon. Come on, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you, the Quakers on the Moon is really, that was written down, I believe, in 1890. It was 50.
Oh.
I mean, it was 50 years after Joseph Smith supposedly said it by Oliver Huntington. I mean, come on,
Okay.
that's a long time later. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into that one. But yes, I did have Master Peace on the Mormon News Roundup. He was on episode 64 here. You'd think that this channel would have more subscribers considering the amount of people that we've had onto this program. But yeah, he hosted episode 64. If you want to go back and watch that, we had a very interesting episode there.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. All right,
Yeah,
man.
Very nice. Hey, good to see
keep
you.
fighting, brother.
Take care. Hey, for those of you out there, thanks again for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I want to thank Chris one more time on Board Time. Thank you so much, my friend. Really appreciate it. I want to thank Mark Crispin. I want to thank Theotis Whoopi for those super chats. Really means a great deal to me. I thought we had a good episode tonight. We'll try to do some Real Talk Mormonism. Anybody out there who wants to call in on the next episode, we will do so. Thanks again, everybody. Stay safe. And remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.